Hello there, welcome to another episode of World of Tanks Tips Talks with Ungainly Titan. This is the last episode in the series, and I want to discuss measuring your progress, measuring your skill in tanks, and how would you best go about doing it. Now, in the first instance, you can go to the World of Tanks console website, just stick it into Google, and you'll get up worldoftanks.com, consoleworldoftanks.com, and you can go to that page. You can go and find your stats page. So we have a look here. We have this is the entry site, the portal, and I'm already logged in. You don't need to be logged in, but you can log in with your gamer tag from Xbox or presumably from PS4 as well. And you go to My Stats when you're logged in, and you should see your own stats page. You can also search for your through the stats page in the gamer tag. Now, personal rating is one of the measures on the thing here, minus 6,256, and the higher that number is, the better your overall ability in the game, and it is, as far as I can tell, a reasonable reflection of ability. Other measures you might look at would be win rate, survived, damage caused and received, kill to death ratio. You can also, if you go into the stats menu, you can get into the Hall of Fame and you can see how you compare with others. I'm pretty well down in the Hall of Fame, but the top players can have survival rates, win rates in excess of 60%, survival rates of close to 50%, damage caused and received in excess of 2, and kill to death ratios anything up to 4. So that's the kind of what the top players can do. So it is possible to have pretty high win rates, and it is, even though it's random and your teams are completely random and they don't really operate as teams or cooperate in any meaningful way, it's still possible to read the game and look at it and see what the top players are capable of doing. However, these measurements have a weakness. As far as I know, there is no site, and Wargaming don't provide tracking of these statistics over time. If you could track your personal rating over time, it would probably give you a good measure of whether you're improving. Now, I think it does go up. There is a time in game component to it, but at the same time, it would give you the speed at which it goes up and the rate at which it increases. And maybe your position on the Hall of Fame would give you an indication of whether you're improving. But things like win rate, survival rate, and all the rest of them, if you have very large numbers of games, these numbers will go up quite slowly, because one game in 20,000 games makes a much smaller impact on these numbers than when you have one game in 2,000. There is, however, another metric, and that is WN8. It is a player-based metric. I think initially came up with by the people in the PC world. And it is a measure of player skill based primarily off of damage done. Kills and other things that you do have an impact on it. And if you go to the site wotinfo.net and look up your gamer tag for the Xbox server, you will find a page similar to the one that's just about to appear on the screen. So this is pretty similar to the stat page on the console stats portal, but it gives you this metric WN8. There's also WN7 and EFF efficiency. They're older measurements, and they were easier to pad and stuff like that. But the best bit about the WOT info site is that you can go down along that menu and you can see there are things like recent statistics and efficiency trend. So the recent statistics gives you your statistics over the last week, your statistics over the last month, and your overall statistics. So you can see there can be quite a difference in the various numbers in the various columns, obviously, depending on how well you're doing. And you can be doing considerably better in the recent past than you were over the longer term. So therefore you know then that you have made progress, and that your overall that your play is better than your overall figures might suggest. In my cases, there's a big difference between my recent figures and my overall figures, because I spent quite a long time, up to 10,000 games, when I was really, really, really poor. You can also look at the efficiency trend, which is a kind of a daily figure, showing the three numbers as a kind of a bar. But I mean, the one you obviously pay attention to, like I said, is the win 8. And you can also look at them as a graph. Now, this graph has a couple of caveats that you need to pay attention to. The x column is not, or the x-axis is not linear. It is daily on the right-hand side of it, and then it switches over to monthly with a transition in the middle. But it's also the overall figure, and it doesn't go back to the start. It doesn't keep your entire history, or if it does, it doesn't display your entire history. They also had a database crash at some point in the not too distant past, and this also affects this particular chart. However, when I started out, I had a WN8 of about 600 or thereabouts. So you can see that would have been down at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen somewhere, based on the current chart. So it is possible to give a better impression than you deserve on these figures. It is possible to pad the stats, so to speak. You can play your favourite tanks, the ones that you're best at, particularly low tier ones, and give yourself higher statistics than you would probably deserve if you were just grinding across all tanks or random tanks. However, in that particular case, who exactly are you fooling, and why are you doing it? But if you want to use the numbers to measure your skill, and to measure improvements in your skill as you go along, it is a reasonable way of doing it. I wouldn't exactly use it for comparing yourself against other players, but comparing yourself against yourself, it is probably quite reasonable, because playstyles and stuff like that will have an effect on it. And you want to be looking at other things like win rate and stuff like that if you're comparing yourself to other players. But if you want to just compare yourself, like I said, to yourself, this is a reasonable way of doing it. It probably underreports a little on the light tanks, because it doesn't track assisted damage. So people who are, say, particularly passive scouts and stuff like that might not find it as useful. But I think it's a reasonable way of measuring your progress. And I think measuring your progress is a really encouraging way, actually, because with this particular statistic, you do feel like you're making actual progress. So as I said, this is pretty much it. I have nothing more really to say on the tank tips subject, unless somebody has specific questions to ask. Feel free to ask questions in the comments, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed this whole series and found it useful, and we'll catch you again soon.